We are tired of confinement and masks and sanitizing. We can't wait for normalcy to return. In so many ways, I think about this time as like the story of Noah and the ark. When a worldwide storm was bringing death and destruction, and families were huddled inside the darkness of a boat, and they hoped for deliverance, and they waited for smooth sailing ahead. In this unprecedented time of separation and confinement, this story has added meaning for us, especially as we sit day after day behind locked doors waiting for an all-clear command and the hope that we will emerge with the promise of a rainbow. Another story with themes very similar is the story of Jonah. Remember his surrender to a raging sea, only to be saved inside the belly of a great fish? Now, certainly that was not an ark, and yet it had the same effect, as that fish saved Jonah's life and prepared him for the new creation, which was to be his gift to Nineveh. It's a truism that history always repeats, but that's especially true in every story from Scripture. The biblical message is always the same. God reacts to a broken world by doing all that he can to protect and rescue and begin life anew. And his story becomes our story. Why did Israel carry the Ark of the Covenant except that it was like a small boat that contained their history and was symbolic of God's presence in their midst? Like unborn children carried inside a mother, the lives of God's faithful people are always carried in the womb of his love. Stories of arks and a great fish and raging storms and deliverance are simply prophetic ways of helping us make that connection. Now, having just sailed through Holy Week and Easter, albeit in a different way this year, we can't help but realize similar themes. Because of a broken and dying world, Jesus entered a tomb, which became his ark, and emerged with death destroyed, and like a rainbow in the sky, covered an entire world with the colorful joy of new creation. As difficult as our present confinement has been, we are not the first to have endured such inconvenience. We won't be the last. And consider the message carried in the story of the ark. God didn't abandon faithful people. Even in the midst of worldwide destruction, there is the promise of safety, and every storm does end with peace and new life. In the story of Jonah, we hear the same message. God gathers us together despite our fears, our running away, our imperfections, and he sends us back out to create a world full of faith and hope and love. Now think about why we spend so much time in the structures of our church buildings. We gather to regroup from the storms of life and remember the miracle of Easter. We celebrate how such grace sends us back out into the world with new hope and servant joy. Every time we worship is like another day huddled with Jesus in a tomb. And then our breakout into his world of potential and promise and servant love. We are a new creation because of what he has done and is doing for us. Now, some have wondered and are even writing about if the future of the church now is going to be determined by our time of separation, by scattered people tied together only by technology, such as Zoom meetings and Facebook and YouTube videos. Now, these all have great potential, as support for our life together. But none of them will ever take the place of the family that we call the church. The family that we can see face to face, that we can talk to, that we can listen to, that we can learn from, that we can work with. Because despite our differences, we gather as one and become something new because of our time together. As God proclaimed in Genesis, it is not good for anyone to be alone. He created us to be a community. And to make that happen, He came in person as Jesus to show us how to gather and how to be one. He came to gather, not to separate. He came that we might become one in Him, through Him, for Him. Now we all long for familiar faces and conversations, for the breaking of bread and joining our voices together in liturgy and hymns. God created people to be families. And the family we call the church is Christ's body on earth. We are His hands and feet. And we become together more than any of us can be alone. This is a different time, but let it be a good time, like Noah's confinement in a boat, or Jonah's trip in the belly of a whale, or like Jesus' confinement in a tomb, and the resulting resurrection miracle that does give us new life and new hope and a real purpose for our living. Storms never last forever. And when the rainbow emerges after a storm, or angels glow at an empty tomb, we understand what we have been waiting for, and more importantly, who has been waiting with us. Here's the bottom line. It's going to be okay.